Here's a short video on how to make mac and cheese with bacon. Enjoy! Okay, here are the basic ingredients. We have bacon. You'll notice that it's the thick cut, natural. Oscar Mayer is great. You can see there's still a lot of meat along with the fat. We do have mac and cheese blend. This is the Giant brand. You can use any brand of mac and cheese blend. It works well. And then we have the Protein Plus Elbows from Barilla. And it's important to get that because it doesn't have all white starch. It has extra fiber and also the protein that you're going to need. So, first thing we're going to need to do is start the pasta, because that's going to need to cook a while. When it's the protein enhanced stuff, it requires longer cooking for the noodles to get soft enough to really make a nice delicious blend with the cheese sauce. So I will get back to you in a minute with how
Okay, back with you. So we've put hot boiling water that I have from my water dispenser over all of the mac and cheese. Well, not the mac and cheese, the noodles for the mac and cheese. And I'm turning this on high. See how I got that on high? And you'll notice it's about 1 inch from the top. You want to make sure that there's enough water for the noodles to absorb as they cook. So I'm going to put that on high, but I'm going to watch it as I cut up this bacon. I'm going to use scissors, and I'm going to actually cut it. It makes it a little faster and easier rather than trying to slice it. And that way it cooks evenly in smaller pieces, and then I'll drain the fat. Okay, so it only took me a couple minutes to cut the bacon. I'm turning it on now. You don't want to go too high, but you do want it to start cooking. You can see it's pretty well cut. Again, it took me less than 5 minutes to do that, which is really helpful when you're trying to make quick meal prep. Here it's starting to sizzle. And you can tell it only took me a few minutes because look, the noodles aren't even really starting to cook just yet. I'm going to pull a fork out. See? I'm going to use this fork to start stirring the bacon up to get it evenly dispersed on the bottom of the pan so that it'll cook evenly. Once all that's done, then I'll drain the fat. The noodles have absorbed a lot of water, so I'm going to add more water to it so that they can continue to cook and not dry out and get soft enough to make the mac and cheese. And you can see that the bacon's cooking up very quickly, and sometimes you can see the burning around the edges. That's just the fat. You've got to keep it moving and keep an eye on it. Once it starts to brown, it can burn itself very quickly, so got to keep an eye on it. Okay, so I'm using the fork to strain the bacon. I'm just tipping the pan and then using the fork to pull that out onto the plate, and that's good enough. It doesn't have to be drained any more than that. So there's the fat from the bacon, and there's the pan. It's going to have to be scrubbed out a bit. Baking soda is a great abrasive to use on that, and it gets it out pretty easily. And then I'll use that same pan to make the cheese sauce. So we have a clean pan, and now you can see how high up that pasta has cooked. It's all the way up to the top. You know it's nice and soft. It's time to drain it. The pasta is drained, and I have this little handy strainer thing that I use to drain it over the sink, and I leave that on so that it doesn't get dried out while I'm going to make the cheese sauce. So it's important to start with a little bit of flour. It's about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons, give or take. You can kind of see that a little bit. I generally don't use measuring cups and things like that. I just sort of do it by look and feel. I'm going to put some milk. Here we go. You can use lactose-free milk, but I'm going to put a little bit of milk in there. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe about 1/3 of a cup of milk. I'm going to stir that up. And I want to sort of get that blended. I'm going to turn the heat on, kind of low, just to sort of let that get together and start to cook a little bit. Heat up this
mix of flour and milk a bit. Get this a little bit warm. And I'm using a fork so that I can break up the flour. The next thing I'm going to do is add some butter to that. The reason why we add a butter, it's a French way of cooking. It's called making a roux, R-O-U-X. I'm going to put in about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of butter, just the cube itself. Let's see if we can get that off the paper. The wax paper here, yep, here we go. And I'm just gonna add that directly to the pan. I'm gonna move my fork out of there a bit and let it melt. You see how that's starting to get thick down there? It looks like it's getting a little bit too thick. I'm gonna let this butter melt first. We want the roux to be prepared before we add any cheese. What this does is actually help it be a little bit creamier. If you don't do this, then you just sort of have a lot of cheese that sits in there and gets a little gelatinous and kind of hard, and it makes it harder to reheat the next day and things like that, and this just gives it a lot better texture. So I'm going to add a little bit more milk. The rest of what I've gotten here, I'm going to have to get some more, and to get that to be a little bit thinner. Notice that the heat is turned almost all the way down because you don't want this stuff to cook too fast, and I'm pouring in some more milk, and the butter's still doing its melting thing. I'm going to use the fork now, and you can see how the flour and everything has kind of come together and bonded a bit into a little bit. It's a little lumpy, but that's all right. Just keep stirring it. I have a little piece of bacon in there because I have my fork over on the bacon platter. And you want to make sure the butter gets completely melted, which it is, just about. And see how the roux has become more smooth? And still on the outside edges there is a little bit more of that flour kind of coming together. Let me stir that in there. It's become basically smooth and slightly thicker than milk normally would be. This extra liquid will again keep that sauce nice and creamy. Alright, that looks good. I'm going to add the cheese next. All I do is take both of those packets of cheese and dump them in so that they start to. So I've dumped in the cheese, and now I'm going to start kind of turning that a bit with my fork underneath to bring the roux to the top and the cheese to the bottom. It's kind of a sticky mess. Hard to do that while I'm holding the phone in my hand. So you can see how it sort of almost seems to have absorbed all of that roux. So I'm going to pour a little bit more milk in there, about a 1/4 cup or so, to help loosen that up, and I'll stir it up and see where we go. So here it is. After all I had to do was just stir it up. It's still pretty sticky, but you can see that there's a little bit of almost like liquid in there. I have it on a really low heat because if you turn the heat up too high, the cheese will burn, so will the milk, and of course that doesn't taste good. So keep it on low. You can maybe medium. Right now I've got it on pretty low flame. I'm actually going to turn that up just a tad. If you turn it up, you have to constantly stir it to make sure it doesn't burn or stick to the bottom. At this point, just to give it a little extra weight, so to speak, I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. That's it. That's all you need. Heavy whipping cream. Don't put any more than that in, otherwise it will not be very good. All right, the cheese is completely melted. I've turned off the flame, and I didn't add anything to it other than what you've seen so far. The cream, even if you're lactose intolerant, because it's so little in all of the ingredients that you'll eat, it should not bother you. I've had other people eat it and it hasn't bothered them. You'll notice that I waited till it was completely melted, and nice and creamy, that creamy texture there, before dumping in all of our bacon. And actually, I'm going to hold a couple of pieces aside to put in. I'm going to use for another recipe. Here we go. But I'm going to leave that there because I don't think. There we go. And then I'm going to incorporate that all the way in until it's completely immersed in the cheese. It's all incorporated, so you have beautiful melted cheese with lovely bits of bacon in it, and that's ready. So here I've put in half the pasta and half the bacon and cheese mixture. I'm going to put them all together, incorporate that together before putting the remainder of each in there, so that I can mix half and half and have it all blend in well. I'm about to add the remainder halves, but I just wanted to make a quick point. I put it into this container because this one fits in the refrigerator well, but you can use any bowl or any other container that might work that you can put a cover on. But it's important to mix half of each ingredient together first, because you want to make sure that every single piece of macaroni is covered in cheese. Otherwise, you might end up having lumps of cheese or lumps of bacon and then plain noodles. So if you do half and half, it blends it together a lot better. So here's the finished product. You can hear how creamy that is when I stir it. It's completely incorporated. It makes a lot. You can see from the side here how full that is. You can eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner.